G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project again. And today I have with me, first of all, Angela Heise from Queensland. How are you, Angela?
Very well, thank you, Alan.
This is, I think, your second Campfire Project panel.
Yes,
It's great to have you here. Then we also have Jerome Lamarque from Sydney. G'day, Jerome.
Hey, Alan. Hey, Angela. Looking forward to this, as always.
And yeah, you've been pretty much a regular, which is really great.
Yeah.
And then we also have Peter Balcarek from the Sydney or New South Wales as well. Peter, this is the about third or fourth time we've had you on the campfire.
Yeah, something like that, and glad to be back. Thank you.
It's really great. So what I love about this is that so many of you have had the one-on-ones, you've come into the panel discussions, and then you've just keep on diving back in because you're bringing value to everybody who's listening in on this. So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are so regular as well. So when we talked the other day, we talked about a list of things we could talk about, and a couple of the subjects: the changing dynamics within relationships, giving the shift in gender roles, and the blurred responsibilities within families. And that led on to a couple of other things like what tangible tips can we give men to help them step into the new versions of masculinity as we're trying to create, and how do we create better communications between men and women when it comes to masculinity and femininity. So I think, Peter, you came up with some suggestions on these. So as usual, I like to throw it over to somebody to start this off. So would you like to get it kicked off on this?
Sure, I guess I don't have any other choice. Yeah, so the first question, changing dynamics within relationships. So I guess the reason why I suggested the question is that it was because I think in media lately we see more and more the topic of gender, there's theories, and there are people that, and we still are starting to, I guess, explore more and more about the other genders. And so men and women is not something definitive in our world today. And as well, with the female empowerment in the last few decades, women are stepping into their power, and they're starting to be more and more independent, and they are more and more independent. And the traditional role of a man as a breadwinner in Western society is starting to diminish, and I think it's diminishing quite quickly. So with that change, which is quite rapid in my view, the perception of what we are supposed to do, and I'm going to speak for myself, what am I supposed to do as a man, what my role is as a man, is changing really quickly. So what worked for my father and for my grandfather is really, really different to what is working for me, and what is actually required for me within my relationship or within the society. So with that comes a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion that is out there for myself as a man, and I speak to a lot of men. There's a lot of confusion, and I think that confusion will be probably on the side of women as well. And I come from Slovakia, which is, I would say, still a bit more traditional society where men are, the breadwinners, and women traditionally would be, the caretakers. And but that is changing quite quickly as well. In the last 16 years that I haven't lived there, and I lived here. But in Australia, my perception is that women are very strong, very empowered, very powerful, and they really are taking their role of being independent seriously, and they are really strong, and they can be very powerful leaders that can enrich the whole society. So I guess what I'm going to throw out there, for myself, I still think that some of the traditional roles of the male could be preserved. But at the same time, I think that it is up to really the couple or the relationship or the partnership to decide what roles are going to be up to, in the responsibility of the male or the female or any other gender within that relationship. But I do feel like there's a bit of a maybe push in the society where men are taught to embrace their emotions, are taught to be to embrace the softness within the relationships, and we are not really taught anywhere how to do that. Yet the expectation would be there. And the confusion, I guess, for myself comes from the fact that there is still this ingrained, I guess, expectation from the society for us men to be strong at the same time. So maybe I'm going to ask the other panelists, what their opinion is on this, and whether they feel similarly, or if they have different opinion, I would like to hear that so that I can maybe broaden my horizons.
Okay, Jerome or Angela, who'd like to jump in first?
Would you like to go, Angela?
So, I agree with you. Roles are changing, and they're changing. The problem is that culture has not caught up with that. If you look at values that are being proposed for men, as you said, men still have to be strong, and they still have to take care of things. And when I work with people, they generally say that, for example, women still do most of the housework.
Yeah,
that has not changed. Women have the jobs, they have their careers, and they still take care of the workload at home. They take mostly care of the children. They take care of families, of health, and all of that. Whereas the husband or the partner often comes home and says, "I've done my work for today."
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think really needs to change. And again, it's not. If we're talking about the communication, if I can go to the third question, this is what has to change in communication. My experience is that men often look for solutions in communication and women look for discovery. So as long as men go in with, I'm doing my work and I'm doing what I'm told, what you tell me to do, and this is when strong women come in and saying, hey, this is your task and this is what you do, things can get, very, I don't know, it's just not the kind of model that I think would be useful for a man to open up and say, I want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Just a redistribution of tasks, really.
Yeah, it's kind of going from one job to another.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, in my relationship, I'm the cook.
It's interesting.
So I cook at home, and I have taken that with passion. But I agree with you. Sorry, Jerome, I'll just say something and then I'll let you speak. I agree with you, and thank you for putting in those words so nicely, because yeah, that's what I feel is happening. That in some way we are expected to change as men. I'm going to speak for men. At the same time, it's hard for us to change, and it's actually kind of easy to stick to those masculine roles, because those require us just to come home and be cool and do nothing really.
Really interesting. And thanks for posing the question, Peter, as well, because I was struggling to come up with a topic. So I look at it from, I think there's belief systems, which we've all got, and then there's facts, and we can argue facts, and that, a fact is if we don't breathe, we die. Of oxygen. And I think the question that was posed was changing dynamics within relationships, giving the shift in gender roles and blurred responsibilities, and how can men change their masculinity in the new dynamics. And I think it's more about how can men get back to being men in the relationship rather than changing the dynamics. Because I think we've shifted off center from who we are. We've come off track with who we are, and that's where everything's become blurred. And so I think, rightly so, women now, I think it was from World War II, when they went back into the workplace because the men went to war, and then the introduction of the credit card, and when we look at history and the pill, where women now had all these opportunities now to start living through more independence, earning their own money, not getting pregnant through having sex. And so they had a sense of more freedom within their life that men had for many, many, many years. And I think with any shift we do in life, there's a positive and there's a negative. There's always two sides of the coin. It's never just, this is great. We have to explore, what have we missed out in the shift as well? Where have the lines become blurred? So it's that saying, we've always got to be careful what we wish for, because we might get it. And ultimately, and I know you're really big on this, Alan, is children. And we look back, if we look at what is best for a child growing up, I think if we answer it based on society and evolution and the next generation and having harmony, less violence, less aggression, what is best for a child growing up? And I think when we actually look at outcomes rather than who do we need to become, we can then align ourselves to those outcomes. Is it good that two parents are out working to pay a mortgage, to have a nice car, and that child now is being shifted around amongst strangers that have opened up businesses to look after children? So we look at facts and we can look at our belief systems. But if we look at a child, what is best for a child growing up? And then we can actually start defining, well, where do we fit in it as a man and a woman? Or even if it's a same-sex relationship growing up, who is going to be the teacher and who is going to be the nurturer? You look at some of the tribes, the Meso-Maori tribes, women do a lot of the nurturing up to the age of 10, 11, and then they take the boys off and the men take the boys, and they go through rituals. We see this in religion like Judaism where you know, there's a bar mitzvah where a boy becomes a man. But I think we've lost some of those things where for us men, we go through the 4 stages in life, like page, knight, prince and king. And sometimes we can stay in knight too long as a man and we don't grow up and mature. And then women will go, well, where's all the men gone? It's because we're staying in the knight role too long. Is it making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, if we look at it from the point of view, first of all, for children, for instance, or boys growing up, that rite of passage, it's to a certain age. When children are very young, mum puts boundaries in place, but they're all domestic boundaries, keeping safe and keeping close. When we get a little bit older, that's when dad were putting in boundaries of the world. And because there weren't men around, the boys, you know, were going out into the world with no boundaries, no understanding. And that's why we've got so many old boys that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s and still haven't got to manhood yet. So we had very structured roles for both the male and the female. In my particular case, my first wife left and I had 3 boys to raise on my own. So all of a sudden it wasn't a choice of, well, what do I do and what I don't do? I just had to do everything. You know, the cooking and the ironing and everything else. But that also then meant me starting to teach them how to cook and iron and even sew and things like that themselves at an early age. So that when they grew up, they would go into the world where they could find a woman who they wanted, not because they needed her. So they were self-sufficient. They could do all those other roles. So I was pretty lucky by having been divorced and going through that without having to question, okay, who does what and which way should it be done? So I had to do it all. So when I sit back and I look and I think about so many men and the confusion of where they are, at what point do they change their roles, and does that affect them in their traditional ingrained system of understanding that we have of what a man is? Yeah.
And I think
that impacting.
Yeah, and the conversation more is, it's not for me, because I coach a lot of men, for me the blur is not, it's immaturity. When does that immaturity become maturity? Because it doesn't matter if the woman earns more money than you. What happens is a woman still from my experience, now this is a belief, fact, and I think this is where we can, my belief is every time I've been with a woman and you treat her like she feels like she's being taken care of, feels safe then to be vulnerable. And then from that, you can have great sex. But if a woman doesn't feel safe with a man, she will be on guard for a lot longer, and that could spoil a great sexual relationship. When a man feels like he's leading and the woman feels like, I'm being taken care of, he's making decisions, we're going to this restaurant. She might not even like the restaurant, but she feels like, wow, this guy, he's rung up and he said, I booked a restaurant, I'm going to take you out, get ready. All of a sudden she's going, whoa, he has to now give up a bit of leadership, and there's a struggle within her, but deep down she's going, I like this. And so I'm happy to be wrong, Angela.
No, you're absolutely right. But the thing is, a woman will only give that up if the man is a man.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Yeah.
If you have an immature boy sitting across the table from you who expects you to be mum, because guys live at home still. I work with guys who are in their late 20s. They still live at home, and mom still takes care of everything.
Yeah.
I don't think that the women are actually doing those guys a favor. But there are a lot of women who are in relationship with boys.
Yes.
And I talk to a lot of women who say, when I'm done with this one, I'm done. I'm not going to be mom again.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the thing is this. If you want to have sex, I don't know. I don't want to go back to bed with a boy. That's not really when I feel desired.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think
it's a real issue these days.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a men and woman thing. I think it's a boy and man thing. The time I've been with women and I've been a boy for a lot of time. I'm not sitting here like an angel saying, it's just the discussion. It's like,
you still look like a boy.
Thank you. I'm only 18. But you can compare the two. And I think when a woman feels like she's in the energy of him, a man wouldn't worry about how much a woman earns or the role she's got because he's so secure within himself.
Yeah, it's just that I agree with everything that you guys said. It's just that is there maybe a situation where women like the men to take charge, obviously in a respective manner, and be men and be mature men, or is there maybe I guess not environment, but maybe atmosphere or current, I'll call it a narrative maybe, where, for example, in Sweden, when you open the door for a woman, it's considered to be offensive. Or when you buy a drink to a woman, it's considered to be offensive. And then the confusion that comes for men, and agree, a lot of men are still boys, when they are 25. I think I was a boy when I was 25. Then men ask themselves, okay, well, do you want me to be a man, or do you want me to leave you alone, and do you want me to let you be in charge, or am I actually offending you when I try to be in charge? And I think that it's quite confusing because you as a man, you will not be able to, I guess it's not written on the woman's forehead what she likes, and it's about communication as well. But as well, I think that when you date a woman, there is this certain expectation that the woman doesn't want to tell you exactly what you should be doing because you should know as a man. But then as a man, you go, okay, well, should I open the door or should I not open the door? Because I don't know, what does this woman like, what does she not like? And as well, the culture comes into play a lot, where I think and this is my observation, I'm not saying it's true, and it's just vast generalization. I think that the Eastern European women and Asian women still like that chivalry. And I think growing number of women in the Western world at least think that they don't like the chivalry, or they think that the chivalry is dead because it's patriarchal or whatever we want to call it, And again, like, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just exploring and dancing around the topic, and I feel comfortable doing it here, even though if I was doing it somewhere else, I might be already shut down, like I'm touching a topic that is not touchable. So I think it can be pretty confusing for guys these days, to say, do you want me to be a man, or do you want me to be
I've walked down in Sydney, and I've been going into buildings, and I've opened the door for the women. And on some occasions I get a smile and a thank you, and others I get this snarly look. What the hell do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
And so we don't know where we are, because there seems to be a completely different view in each of the women in that situation, their views on how things should be. That's down to them. And then I started thinking, well, it's not me. That's each of those people. So it really is, you said before, coming back to being secure in who you are as a man, and knowing that being secure in yourself doesn't mean the jobs that you're doing. You might be a man who stays home and looks after the children while your wife goes out to work because, she's bringing in more money, or the career that she's got to something that she really loves. And you have
the family better. If it suits the family better, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And by doing that, realizing that the actual task itself is nothing to do with being manly or not being manly. It's how it all comes together, the role that you play in the family.
Yeah. May I go back to this whole opening door thing?
Yeah, sure. Please, I would like to hear your opinion.
All the time. Now, I come from a time when I did this whole thing. When I was in my 20s and a guy opened the door for me, I would say, you can do this when I can't do it for myself. But this is 30 years ago. So this was at a time when a guy opened the door. There were also other liberties that were included in that. So he wasn't treating me like an equal. He wasn't treating me like somebody who he was courteous for, or was doing this from a place of, being a gentleman, in that sense of how a gentleman is somebody who behaves with courtesy towards others. Now, when somebody opens the door for me, I appreciate it. I don't say I can open the door, but again, it has changed. When a guy does that these days, there's not that expectation in there that I'm the feeble woman, the weak woman who can't do it for herself. There's a different attitude behind it, and I think it's a courtesy. I open doors for people as well, and I don't mind if a woman opens the door for me as well. But when a man I'm going out with or opens the door for me, I feel good about that. If he starts being more patronizing towards me, then that will probably change. But that rarely happens these days.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting subject. It's a small micro thing we're discussing, but it's very powerful as well. And it's those micro things that we see. I think it comes back to authenticity. I think women, much more than men, are very intuitive. I think, and that might be because they're probably intuitive over protecting a child. They've got that instinct where they can sense danger a lot quicker than men because we're so sort of tunnel visioned in our thinking. Where if a man's doing it with authenticity and he's genuine, I've never had that issue. I think when you're just doing it because you've got manners and you're being polite, I think a woman picks that up intuitively. And 9 times, I actually don't think I've ever been insulted through opening a door for a woman.
I haven't. I just heard it.
Yeah, I haven't. I haven't experienced it myself. I know you have, Alan, but I haven't. And I just, I think it comes back to the core of who we are. I think when a woman feels she knows herself inside and she feels confident, and it comes back to not taking things so personally as well. Yeah. The moment we start taking things so personally, we become very fragile as human beings. And
that's popular, unfortunately, these days.
Yeah. And we talk about emotions now. If we move into the talk about resilience, and what does the word emotionally strong mean? And so we say a man crying, well, he's being strong in his emotions. But sometimes for me, coaching men, it's not to take things so heavily. It's actually not to take yourself so seriously. Yeah. And when a woman puts you down or takes the mickey out of you, if you crumble, because a woman will test you. She will test your manhood.
And they should.
But she won't do it in a physical, violent way. She'll do it in subtle ways. But what she's doing, she's going, are you passing my tests?
Yes.
May I tell a story about that?
Yes, I'd love to hear it.
Are you, this is actually, are you familiar with the Grimm brothers, the fairy tales?
Yep.
Yeah.
Frog Prince?
Yeah.
And the whole story about how you have to kiss so many frogs before you discover the prince?
Yes.
The original tale, the Grimm brothers, was actually quite different. And the German version still is very different. In the German version, she actually doesn't kiss the frog. She gets so annoyed with him, she throws him against the wall. And that's when he turns into a prince. No kissing. Testing the guy to see how resilient he is. Find out what he can actually take.
Yes.
But the English translator who translated the fairy tales into English decided that that was too violent for children. Not realizing that fairy tales were originally moral tales for adults.
They were. So in the German original, did she kill a few frogs, throwing them on the wall?
No, just that one. He got really annoying. And she just threw him against the wall, and that's when he done. And I always say, I wonder what world we would live in if we threw guys against the wall. Instead of going, how many more do I have to kiss before I find the real power?
So for any of the women listening to this and that, Angela's ideas are not the ideas of the rest of us. So don't go throwing this. Even though at times we possibly deserve it. But really, when we think about that aspect of it, that's just a carry on from when we're kids, because we talk about children who push their parents to the edge. They're not trying to break their parents. they're trying to see if their parents will hold. So if both parents are being challenged in that way. So it comes down to then the woman challenging the husband. It's just really the same thing, isn't it? It's about being tested. Are you able to fulfill that role to the needs of everybody else around you? Now, as parents, we have to fulfill that need to our children. Our children are not ours to just turn them into something that we think they should be. As I say, that we are not carpenters and we are not sculptors. We're gardeners. Our job is to nurture our children and help them grow into the best version of themselves. And along that way, they're going to test us. So they're going to, throw us against the wall, so to speak. And the same thing when as we grow up, we're going to do that with our bosses and our mates and things like that to see whether they're going to hold. It's only natural then that the woman's going to do that with us as well.
But these days, when you just swipe left or you swipe right, you don't even get the chance to talk about this. When I had this, I went in an Uber the other day, and that driver was really not great. And do I now give this guy a low star rating and jeopardize my own star rating, or am I really honest and tell him that he's not going to get that? We're very careful these days. We're tiptoeing around each other. And I find we're losing our authenticity and playing games that I find really, I don't know, that they're just not needed.
I think it's gonna get a little bit worse before it gets better, because this is coming from the university campuses. These safe spaces, creation of safe spaces and trigger warnings and microaggressions and that sort of thing. And even the fact that, at university campuses, especially in America, a lot of stand-up comedians refuse to go there because they just are scared to say inappropriate jokes because they will be considered to be, I don't know, sexist, racist, whatever. This is at the space where you should be offensive. Like, if you are young, you should be rebellious, right? You should explore the limits. You should push the limits. You should be offending people, obviously should maybe is a strong word, but I guess you should not be harming people, but challenging people, and especially the older ones in the system, is something that is part of younghood and growing up, and when I was at uni, I remember I've done so many dangerous things, and it was fun, it was great. And these days, it's supposed to be a new safe home. So bubble wrap or generation snowflake, and that's not my term. I just Googled it, but it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen if when this new generation is going to come to the so-called real life, where they will hear no, and they will hear no, we don't do it this way, and we do it this way, and if you don't do it our way, off you go. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. And the mental health problems, they are skyrocketing because of that, anxiety, depression, all that stuff. So I'm curious what's going to happen.
What we've actually done, when we look at it and we go, okay, we worry about the new generations coming through, they're just getting out there, they're going out and doing whatever they like. And the problem with that is it comes back to us, their parents, the fathers in particular, who haven't put those boundaries, those world boundaries in place at the right time for them. And they've gone out there and they've got no direction. We've wrapped them up in cotton wool, or we told them they're special just by turning up, here's a trophy and everything else. Well, that's not real life.
You can be anybody you want,
in reality, that's child abuse, because we've taken the boundaries away. We've just left them wide open, which is like leaving the door of the house open and letting your kid, the front gate go out on the main road. We haven't put that boundary in to protect them. We haven't given them guidance to know where to go. So it really comes back to not so much, I don't think it's the things that the father does in the house, like cooking and washing and things like that. It's that connection with their sons and with their daughters.
The role model, the masculine role model, And I haven't had a helmet on my bicycle until I came to Australia when I was 22. I never wore a helmet before,
And it's fascinating, because when we look at a child develop, a man's development, because the discussions are around the man, and when you said earlier, Peter, about being 25 and not being at 25, you're supposed to not be actually mature. You're supposed to be still finding your feet. You're in that night stage. It doesn't mean you haven't got manners and respect society, but you're in that you're in that discovery mode of who you are as a man. You're in that night phase. It's called the conquest phase. You're trying to conquer things. and most of all, you're trying to conquer yourself. But there's a stage where you go into your early 30s and right through to about 45, where that's when you start growing up. You start wanting to build something and find your path in life, where you become, where you feel like you're becoming a hunter. Where, you talk about cooking. If you look at a lot of the top chefs, I think the males outweigh the women by 80 to 20. 80% of top cooks, chefs are men, 20% of the women, and they sort of dominate the cooking field. So in the home, the kitchen is actually a masculine area. Whoever dominates the kitchen is mainly the person that dominates the home, because it's a very masculine area, because you're providing food for the family. You're the provider of that food. And the bathroom's a very feminine place for the family, because you're taking care of yourself. You're nurturing yourself. But when we look at dynamics and environments, who are we being in those moments, in those places? So it doesn't surprise me if a man likes the cooking, because it's a masculine domain. It's when the shift comes, when a man, if we look at the facts, a man will produce 8 times more testosterone than a woman will produce. And testosterone is a very go-getting energy. It's very, plays a big part in muscle development. And muscle is used for lifting, carrying, pushing, moving, and generating things. So if we understand the roles in the genders, we're actually physically very different as well. We are physically very different and mentally very different as well. So when you coach, when a woman will say, a woman will talk, and I'm happy to be wrong, but all my research, study, and coaching, a woman will talk indirectly, a man will talk directly. Darling, would you like to pull over at the next stop and go for a wee? And he'll go no and carry on. But what she's really saying is, darling, I want to stop and have a wee. She go, but men will, so they'll just go no and carry on. And if you find what's not being said in a relationship, that's where the true art is. In understanding the dynamics between a man and a woman. They're very, very different. A man has to be asked maybe 2, up to 3 to 4 times to do something in the house. Honestly, because it goes in one ear and it goes around an empty space and it goes straight out the other end. It's not, he's not being rude. If you look at if you get a study like 10 families or whatever, the woman will probably ask the man to do a simple job like put the washing out, or can you fix that light, maybe 5, 6, 7 times before he does it. He could walk over the washing. He doesn't even see it. He walks over it, around it, because he's got a different brain. So a woman's got so much more peripheral vision. She can see danger coming from all angles. And a man's vision is very, very focused. So when we look at, it's like a leopard and a tiger. They're very, very different, but they're from the same species. And they've got very, very different habits. And when you study the differences in the way we approach life, we come at it from different approaches, but that's how nature designed it, not how we have nurtured it.
You don't think that we teach men to be direct and women to be indirect? Because I am considered to be very straightforward for a woman, and I have been told that it's really off-putting. Well,
that's because it's coming from a source that it's sort of out of sync, if you know what I mean. So everything's about the outcome when you're negotiating. So if I talk more indirectly, and I'm with a man who understands me better, what I'm doing is I'm then can move more forward quickly in the outcome of what we want to achieve in the workplace. So it's a different conversation. I don't want to go into that conversation about communication, but a woman won't say what she wants. She'll expect the man to guess what she wants by being more subtle.
In that definition you just said then about if you were more indirect and talking to a man, to somebody you're going to get somewhere. But think about if it's a man who doesn't understand that, They're going to be looking at you and going, what the hell is going on? And that's what's happening with Angela when you're saying about you behaving that way and people saying it's off-putting. I think what we do is we like to put people in boxes. And we've pretty much looked at all women being this way and all men being that way, which we're always complaining about because of all the things that are going on at the moment with the battles with the gender and everything else, because all women are saying all men are the same and men are saying all women are the same. So I think the first thing we need to do is to take people out of the boxes and start treating people as individuals and not have an expectation, oh, you're a woman, therefore you have to talk this way. You're a man, you have to behave that way. We have to start looking at, well, you know, the relationship, what are we trying to create between the two of us?
Yeah, I think culture is very important as well. Like maybe that it's maybe supporting a little bit what Angela was saying, that different cultures teach women and men to be maybe different. I actually would prefer to talk to a woman like yourself, Angela. Like I like when, you know, women say how it is and I don't have to wonder, you know, what is it that the woman wants. And I'm from Slovakia, so we are blunt naturally as well. But there might be, you know, different cultures like the Latino and Latinas or Latinos, where you have no idea what they mean because everything they say they don't mean. They mean something else. So it's like, yeah.
This is where maturity comes in, I think. If my partner says to me, darling, would you like to watch a comedy tonight? She's not asking me if I want to watch a comedy tonight.
She's saying if she wants to watch a comedy.
She's saying she wants to watch a comedy, but she's being very, very respectful of my energy.
Yeah? So how would you say it, Angela? Would you say, we are watching comedy tonight?
I would say, what do you feel like doing tonight?
There you go.
And then
that's what I'm saying. So, but if you really wanted to watch a comedy tonight, and a woman, from my experience, will always talk indirectly. Darling, you're on the motorway, you're driving down, darling, would you like to stop at the next station and have a coffee? I know she's saying she wants to stop at the next station and have a coffee, but she's not telling me because it could piss me off. Because
it's a challenge,
Yeah, because it could piss me off, and men are direct. They just go, no, I don't want a coffee. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
it's understanding that because I respect her, you know, and I know you learn this. This is like, because I know that I go, darling, yeah, let's stop over and you can grab a coffee and I can grab. You know, it doesn't become a problem because we understand the differences in dynamics. I know if I was going out with Angela for the night and I rang up and said, Angela, I booked this great restaurant, you're going to love it. She'll go, oh, this is fantastic. But I've learned that as a man. I wasn't born with those skills. I know that if I take the lead in the relationship, Angela then will go, I'm looking forward to tonight and being taken care of.
So it is a cultural issue then, if you're saying you learned this.
Well, I would learn this off another man. I would, you know, men,
women were naturally different, and now you're saying you learned this from another man.
Yeah, well, men learn through watching and learning. Women communicate, they talk. You know, it's like, but a man would have to pass this knowledge down to me. Go, this is how you treat a lady. This is how you respect a lady. It's being shown to me. We're quite simple, men. We really are. And we are really simple creatures. And so anything we do, it's taught down to us by other men. So, and that's bad things as well. So if we haven't got good role models growing up as men, we really struggle. Whereas women will communicate. They will talk and talk and talk. And men want to fix things all the time. We want to fix things. You know, give us a problem to solve and put us. That's why we love playing sport, because we're trying to score a goal. We got a problem to fix. And this is what I'm saying. There is a massive difference in a way a man communicates and a way a woman communicates. But it's learning. It's like learning French. And once we go to school and I go, this is what a woman really likes. Because when I do this, I get great results. When I don't do this, we have arguments. And it's about the outcome.
It's, as Peter was saying, it's cultural and it's also very individual. You know, and that's what often I find is people don't do that. They go into relationships and they just automatically assume certain roles. And if they haven't gotten a role model, then they just assume what they see on social media, on TV, or whatever it might be, and they act through those stereotypes, and it's never really an authentic relationship, and that's when people part ways because they don't really see themselves in the relationship. But if you have those conversations right at the beginning, and this is what I find, this is the courage to actually say, you know what, I love for you to open the door for me. Please surprise me with restaurants, but don't tell me what to do.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, you're not going to
have those discussions.
Yes.
It's a thoughtful things that you do, but not the things that you demand to be done.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. As you're saying, Jerome, there are those, the men need to pass it down to other men. At some point, though, a man had to learn it from a woman because at the very beginning, though it took a man who was wise enough to look at the woman and go, okay, and learn from it without feeling emasculated, but going on a discovery and going, great, I want to have a better relationship, so I learn from them. But most men won't do that. That's why we need men who have that knowledge to pass it down to other men. And that's where that transition and changeover, I believe, came from. Because originally in Aboriginal times, when it came to rites of passage, it wasn't the men who ran that, it was the women. It was the woman. And then that was then passed down because the woman was also looking after the girls as well coming into womanhood, that role was then given to the men. That's one of the beliefs that we have. And so with that point, we found that the men came into their right and looking after the boys into manhood. So therefore, those men who started in that role learn it from the women as well. I think we've got to get away from the fear that as men we're the providers, we're supposed to be tough, we're supposed to be out in front. Well, we might physically be standing in front, but we're still standing side by side with our partner. We're still equals. We're not the same, but we're equals.
Yeah, and I think
respect and knowledge from them. So I think when it comes to how do I handle my attitude in the house, if I have a partner, I got kids and everything else, how do I come to deal with what my role is with the shifting of roles? I think it's not thinking about what's the things we're doing, but it's more a case of what are we trying to accomplish here, and see myself, no matter what job I'm doing, if I'm fixing the car, mowing the lawn, or I'm washing the dishes and hanging out the washing and doing the ironing, that shouldn't have an effect on how I feel about being a man. It should be
not. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I love what you said there. You know, we are equals, but we're different. And I think it's contrast is such a beautiful thing. That's where passion comes from. You know, a relationship works when two people share the same dreams and the same future together. They also have a fundamental understanding of the shared values, but that's sameness. Passion comes from contrast. It comes from very masculine and feminine energy. If we're all being masculine because we're driven by economics, sex and relationships and intimacy really suffer. And then the dreams that you look forward to go out the window because the fundamentals of a relationship are not being nurtured. And, you know, coaching a guy recently, and this is what I mean about understanding communication, is that he's in a coaching session, help people in their businesses. So the guy said, when I've done my work, I want to come home and I just want to veg out. So he wants to go into his feminine energy. He just wants to get the remote control, lie on the sofa, and I go, right, that's the outcome you want. Yeah. But we end up arguing a lot because she works as well. And I go, great. So you know the outcome you want. You want to come in, but there's a pathway to that. It's not about winning arguments. It's about the outcome. And so it's what Angela said earlier. It's like, well, when she comes in and she wants to talk, you try and fix her problems, which escalates into a fight. If you just listen to her and let her explain, because women don't need fixing. They just need to get things off their chest. Women are fine. It's the guys that need fixing most of the time. Women are fine.
Yeah. May I tell you what you know what I generally suggest when I've got clients? I say to the women, talk to other women about what's going on during the day, so you don't bring it all home and download it on your partner.
Yeah.
And to the men, I say, negotiate that you've got 20 minutes to yourself before you engage with people, because otherwise you're going to be watching TV and you're going to be saying, whatever, and there's no real connection. But if you have that space where you can just bring yourself back into that home space, but then be really present with the people around you.
That's so good to hear, Angela. It's right. And it's just going back, it's changing those tactics. So he started listening more. I said, don't fix her. She doesn't need fixing. She is fine. She might be talking about the worst illness in the world, but she's still fine. Women are so much, their pain threshold has been proven is a lot higher than men's.
Yeah.
You know, and so
the babies, yes.
Yeah, but emotionally as well, women are very, very strong. You know, they can handle a lot more than us men. Us men can be quite soft, you know. So it's understanding that and then supporting her through that transition period between work and being at home, because it's an identity shift. And if you bring the work identity into your home identity, you've got the wrong identity in the wrong environment. And so understanding that she needs time to transition her identity, whether it's lover, whether it's mother, whether it's friend, whatever that identity is, she still, and the man can go into his different identity instantly. Yeah, it's black and white with a man. With a woman, she needs that transition period, because from that, so when you talk, you're really just exercising things that you want to get off your chest, because you're great communicators. Us men will hold it in. We won't talk about issues going on. You know, we'll talk about fixing them, but we won't really talk about the thing that's going on inside. So a woman's fantastic at that. And if you let her do it, she feels fine afterwards. She actually really, the oxytocin and her endorphins actually flood her body this is the difference, as she's actually exercising what's going on for her. Oxytocin is filling up her body, whereas it was full of cortisol before she walked through the door. But now she's had that opportunity to change her chemicals. She's got a renewed energy. What happens? Their sex life went up. Not only that, he got to lie on the sofa and she was happy to cook him dinner because she was understood. She was understood. She went, I'm with a man who understands me. And that's a subtle shift. So the outcome was achieved, but he had to create a different strategy for it. Understanding the dynamics of what's going on between a man and a woman. He was being a man, but he had to now become a great listener rather than fixing a problem. Because she didn't need fixing. She just wanted to exercise and get things out of her head, because then it all made sense to her because she talked it out. Whereas us men don't try and talk it out. We actually try and fix the problem. And sometimes there is no problem to be fixed.
That's it, just being the listener. You know, I won't say any more about this, but if you want to get a bit of an idea of a humorous way of looking at how men and women are different when it comes to this, jump onto YouTube and do a search for the title, It's Not About the Nail. So all the listeners out there, jump on and have a look at that. It's not about the nail. You'll have a good laugh, but it really, in a very funny way, it highlights, as you've been saying there, Jerome, the difference between needing to express and needing to fix things. Yeah. And the difference between men and women on that score.
Do you guys not want to be listened to when you've got an issue?
Oh, massively.
Yeah,
massively. But we're more guarded because a woman can talk very, very easily, and that's an admiration. That's a compliment. We have to go, do I trust this person? Am I safe? Our trust levels have to go up to. We have to go up. The green light has to go up before we actually really talk about what's going on. We can talk, Angela, but to talk about real issues.
Talk about the footy and come home and feel much better. I get that.
Yeah, but to talk about real issues, whoa, we have to really.
We have to have a lot of trust.
We need to work on. Is that something that we should support?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is a characteristics that men really suck at, and I think that I used to be like that, and I had depression and I wasn't able to share that with anybody. And as soon as I started sharing that, I healed. I mean, that's simplified, obviously. That took a long time. But the reason why, we have mental health crisis here, right? For men, suicides are through the roof. Mental health as well. Not only men, obviously, but men. 6 guys a day commit a suicide, and one of the reasons is that men just don't have the ability to share their feelings or share their struggles. And I don't believe that there is not enough opportunity. I think there is a lot of support network out there. You know, I think that women would be the first ones to run for help. To provide that support network for their partners if it is heterosexual relationships. But I just think that men, for some reason, it's somehow ingrained in us, in majority of us, that we don't have that skill to share the struggles, share, you know, what went wrong. Even in friendships, you know, we can go with friends 6 to 12 months without calling each other. We don't call each other just to say, hey, how you going? Something has to happen. And it's usually some crap that has to happen. And then we call each other. Or if I need help and I really need help, that's when I'm going to call my mates, as opposed to picking up the phone and just say, hey, how you going? And then end up talking for an hour like women do. So I absolutely agree, Angela. I think this is something that men definitely should strive to improve, so that the emotional vocabulary can improve, so that the ability to deal with the emotions even on their own can improve. And because otherwise it's just stuffing it down and pushing it under the carpet. It's just not going to work, and it doesn't help anyone.
The biggest problem, though, is it's the way we've always been taught, keep it down.
Yep.
You know, yes, we do want to be listened to, but usually when it does come out, it's a vent. So we want someone to hear it, so we're not just, you know, yelling at the wind or the wall. And then when it comes to listening to a woman, we don't want to hear all that because we've got that going on inside of us. So we've got to try and fix their issues. Whereas women don't try and fix us. They listen to us and everything else. And we're wondering that if they're listening to us, what do they think of us? Which adds another problem to us. So we lock it down even further again, because if we share our feelings, where's our masculinity? Because we've been taught men don't cry and all this sort of stuff, you push it down. We're hearing it today with, you know, this stuff about boys will be boys, and that's a terrible thing. But boys aren't going to be anything else but boys. That's what they were born. And so, you know, and the boys now are starting to feel that because I'm a boy, with all this advertising and all this stuff going on about...
I'm a bad person.
Yeah, there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
So we're breaking our children. Our boys are being broken. And this is another reason why the escalation of male suicides is only going to go up. Between the age of 15 and 19, it's the highest there is. Then after that, you're looking at that getting towards about the mid-40s. It hits another peak then.
Yeah.
Women, if you watch the graphs, you'll find that the men are well above the women all the way through.
7 times more likely.
A lot of this is because what we feel about what the other person thinks. So we're not actually in our masculinity, not the proper masculinity. And we need to have the right support around, the right people to talk to understand it.
Yep.
And for other men to also have the ability to sit there and not try and fix things.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson said it really nicely.
And that
like there's big difference being vulnerable and weak, right?
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, and as well, you don't have to be vulnerable all the time and with everybody. It's probably not advisable that you're going to be vulnerable with everybody. But being vulnerable doesn't mean that you are weak. And being weak is not good. You know, like being weak is not, I mean, it's okay for a certain period of time. If you've fallen apart emotionally, it's okay to be weak. But the healthy way of expressing struggles is through vulnerability, through being authentic, through being real, not sugarcoating stuff, and saying what you really feel, and that's not weak.
It's sorry to hear about your depression, Peter, and I love the way that you sort of discovered the inner strength to talk, and I think that's encouraging for other men, because the only way we can help other men is by actually doing the do ourselves. And I say to everyone I work, these kind of things are practiced. And if we look at babies now in prams being pushed down the road, they're on iPads. They're on. The art of communication is dying because we don't communicate. If we look at a lot of families, that one person might be eating dinner in their bedroom on their own, on their computer, and another family member in a bedroom on their computer, or the whole family are in the front room, and they're on their mobile phones. The art of communication is something that's dying. And so the more we can have great conversations like this and say, I'm worried, I'm scared. And it's genuine. It's not, as you were saying, just because it's the sake of a conversation, but I'm generally worried about my job, or I'm generally worried about whatever it is, getting old, whatever that conversation, if you can say it and talk about it, and the other person is mature enough, and it comes from maturity, is mature enough to not crumble under that conversation and go
scared, yeah,
or they're scared, because if then you close up again, like you go into your shell. But the art of communication is dying because we spend more time, 80% more time on our computer or on our phone than we do talking to another human being. And I was at an event the other day and someone asked, really want you to think about it. If you had to give up one of these two things, what would you give up? Your partner or your mobile phone for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Could you live without? And really think about it. You can never go on your mobile phone again, or you can never be. What is more important to you right now? Because it shows in where you spend that time and energy.
Yeah.
I think that's a really hard question for someone to answer. You've got to think then, if you've got all these children on these devices, what are we setting them up for? You know, we know that if a child has to attach to somebody, usually it's the parents, but when the parents are not communicating in the right way, they're detached and everything else, the child will connect to the kids at school. And that's where they get their learning from. They're getting immature conversations from immature friends. And then I had somebody say to me, oh, yeah, but the kids come home, they walk through the door and they go, you ask them, how was your day? Okay, what'd you do today? Nothing. Well, they grunt. Then they go to their bedroom and they spend the next few hours speaking to the same kids they've spent all day with. And somebody said to me, oh, yeah, but they're on the devices. Well, the big thing is they're still communicating, but they're not communicating to the parents. They're not grunting on their devices to their friends. So stop looking at the fact that they're not communicating and realise that they actually are communicating with somebody else, but it's not the people they should be, which are the parents. And whose role is that? Ours. And if we focus on that, being men and women, we can then be more focused on what we're doing, and we'll just come together naturally without having to find, well, how should I talk to my partner? If the focus is on the kids, and let's face it, the kids don't have a responsibility to us. We have a responsibility to them, because it was the twinkle in our eye that brought them into this world.
Yeah.
It wasn't their decision to come into it. So we're responsible for our kids. Our responsibility for mum when early age is set those domestic boundaries for them, keep them nurtured and protected. Dad's role as they start to grow up, teach the girls what men should be like, at the same time teach the boys the world boundaries so they can go out into the world and do the right thing out there and treat everybody with the right respect. So we've all got a part to play. And instead of worrying about me, and I think this is one of the things, big lesson for me through my life, 2 divorces and everything else. As you were saying, that it was 25, Peter, when you started to realise stuff. I think I was twice that age when I started to realise, I've been through a divorce. I'd raised 3 boys on my own, but it was later on and talking to the right men, going through with Aboriginal groups and talking to them and finding out more about their Aboriginal law, that I started to understand more of this. Yeah. And I think it's really a case that we have to start focusing on the things that are important, which is our partners, whether we're male or female, and focus on our kids and everything else, and we will just naturally grow in that instead of worrying about, well, what do I have to do?
Yeah. And I think having Angela on the panel is fantastic, because it's the contrast. You need that to have a debate. We don't want just a one-sided discussion. And Angela, I'd love to ask you, how do you know, because I've asked women this a few times in conversations, how do you know when you're in the presence of a man who's very secure within himself as a man?
Generally doesn't try to impress me.
Yes. What else is going on? Because you're teaching us.
There's respect, there's courtesy, but there's no patronizing behavior. There is no, my father, for example, always said women belong in the back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's no, and I had that conversation with him when I started driving. I said, and then he automatically put his girlfriend into the back seat, and I said, you know what, in my car men sit in the back seat too.
So you learned, so you had that kind of negative thing going up, because
and
it's
so I know when somebody's patronizing me and treats me like, I'm not an equal, I can smell that a mile away.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I know when somebody respects me, when somebody says, oh, you've got a brain. Okay, you've got your experiences. I don't have to, and they don't try to pump themselves up or They just respect me for what I've done and for who I am. And we have some really interesting conversations about things. And it can be authentic, it can be honest, with good boundaries. You know, this is like, maybe we don't want to talk about certain things in the very first conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's again, it's the having that ability to have a conversation about the conversation built in. To be able to say, you know what, when you talk like that, that's how I feel. Then I feel like this, and not you make me feel.
Yeah.
But it's the ability to say, could we talk about how we do this? And when a man is open to that, wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. So he's quite adaptable. Would it be you're around if someone who's adaptable and not too rigid?
Yes, and who's willing to say, you know what, I've got my boundaries and you respect those, and that's perfectly okay. But it's not the I'm here and this is how things are being done, or the opposite, when they become that marshmallow that just wants to please. You know, there's no boundary.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's probably some really good advice to possibly finish this off on, and that for everybody who's listening to this to take that away and think about it. So really like to thank all three of you for being here today. And thanks again, Angela, for coming on with the rose amongst all the three thorns.
I thought we were the roses. And Angela was going to be the thorn.
Yeah, well, I get a lot of manure from you, so that's fun. But this is what I'm loving about this, and I really appreciate you all being on here, and for the people that keep wanting to come into the group and have a chat as well, because we learn so much from each other. And when we stop and listen, I think as Pauline Crawford had said, it's meaningful communications, meaningful discussions where we listen, we respectfully listen, we find out and we understand, we go, so that might be a way in which I can do things better. And so that way we're growing from wherever we are, and that's probably the best way for a man to become a better man, or a male to move into manhood first of all, and move from that boy into manhood and get better as a man as well. Yeah.
Well, really you know what they say, if you are the smartest one, in the room, you are in the wrong room.
That's exactly it.
Well, you're not growing.
I'd add to that, if you're the smartest one in the room, then you're the biggest idiot.
Yeah.
So you're not smart at all.
Yeah.
I learn from everybody else, and that's one of the reasons why I run these, because it's not because I've got any altruistic views of being in charge and having everybody here, but I just learn so much. So I'm doing this because I'm greedy.
Yeah.
It's all about growing. So thanks again, guys, for coming in. Look forward to having you on more panels as well. And for everybody who's been listening today, thanks very much for being here, and we'll see you on the next Campfire Project. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.